Hey everyone, Alex here, healthhacksreview.com. I'm an expert in several medical device and therapeutic equipment and device categories. This video is about laser therapy. And this video is very important if you're trying to become a better informed consumer and sort through all the BS that is in this field, of which there is a lot promoted by all these various different companies, class 3, class 4 especially. Not as much with class 1 and 2. Regardless, this video is specifically about the differences between class 3 and 4. I'm going to be picking apart an article that is promoted by a company that's been in the industry a long time, and it confuses a lot of practitioners. And I'm picking apart this article because it'll be very educational. It'll basically assist you in having a greater capacity to discern when you're reading other articles or hearing claims made by low-level laser companies about what's true, what's not. In general, about 10% of what they say is true, and the rest is just completely made up, basically, to try to steer people away from class 4s. I do like class 3s, just for the record. They are therapeutic. They do work. And then class 4s I also like as well. So hang in with me here. And all right, so here's where the article starts that is on one of these companies' websites. What is the difference between class 3 and class 4 lasers? I'm just going to scroll down, and wherever you just, not the highlighted, but wherever you just see this part, the unhighlighted, that's the actual article. I broke it up into sections. So I'm going to scroll through it once. You can pause the video, and I would suggest reading the article. I've removed the company's name, okay, from the article. Actually, and wherever you see an X or a bunch of X's, that's supposed to be the name, okay, of the laser company. So I'm going to scroll down, pause the screen, and read the whole article first. Then we'll go back and look at my commentary in green highlighted, okay? And by the end of this, you're going to be way more informed about a lot of common sales techniques and tactics and marketing tactics these companies will try to confuse you with. So here we go. Here's the first section. Next section. Next section. Okay, folks, so we are here back at the beginning again of the article. And so what do you do whenever you're reading articles, or let's say you're at an expo or a demo? I mean, any scenario where a laser company is providing information of some kind. So once you read through the article, consider one, the source, who wrote it. Consider the context of the laser regulatory environment. That'll make more sense when I go through this. Consider the claims, of course. And when it comes to claims, it's kind of a little tricky because a lot of these companies are great at their marketing and sales on the phone or on paper. And you have to start to get really good at basically being able to tell if something is a claim or not. Sometimes the way something is presented, it doesn't seem like there's a claim, but there's actually a claim in there. So in general, the way to do it is whenever you're confused about something that is shared, okay, so if it's just a statement, turn it into a question. Just simply say why. Why? Why? You'd be surprised. The more you say why, and then sometimes where's the proof, that happens a lot, you pretty much won't get, well, you can still get fooled, absolutely, but it's going to help you clear up a lot more, because at least you'll get more to the reasons, even though those reasons aren't true. You can then take those reasons and compare them to other people's reasons and see if something doesn't add up. So Class 3 and Class 4 companies have been at war with each other for a while. I would say that most of the stones that have been thrown are probably being thrown by Class 3 manufacturers and Class 3 laser companies. Okay, so let's work on the first part. Consider the source. Okay, so the author of this article is not listed. That's actually pretty common. You'll find that on different Class 3 or low-level laser websites. The author of the article is not listed. If it's such a great article, why isn't it listed? And it's written in a way that would appear to be written by a medical doctor. There's a lot of medical stuff in there that sounds pretty sophisticated. And some of it's even true, but it's surrounded by a lot of falsity. So it's not written by a medical doctor, so don't be too impressed. Okay, so this is where normally I say the company, but anyways, so Blank Company is one of the oldest Class 3 laser companies based in Canada, and they have zero direct experience with Class 4 lasers. So think about it for a second. Would you believe somebody who's making a claim about some other topic or something but has no experience with it, right? Okay, they're experts with low-level lasers. Okay, I'll give them that. Let's just say they're experts with low-level lasers. But we're not talking about that just. We're also talking about Class 4s. Okay, so this company is publicly, here's the information that you have to do more research to eventually find. It's a little trickier. This is why a lot of people just consult and talk to me and just say, you know what, the heck with this. I'm just calling Alex. This company is publicly traded in Canada, relies on selling stock to pay for their operations, not the sale of their lasers. I'm not saying they don't sell lasers. I'm just saying they don't sell a lot of lasers. And the main reason they're actually not bankrupt or keep their doors open is because they're selling stock. So historically, the company's laser sales have been very low year after year. And that information is publicly available. So you have to wonder, how come people aren't buying the lasers? And again, this applies to some other low-level laser brands as well. Okay, it's not the only brand where that's the case here. The products that they make are based on old technology. This, again, is something that is common with low-level lasers. Most of those brands are using very old technology and have never updated, upgraded, even done their own studies. Very few have actually done any studies. In those studies, there's usually not been any new ones. But either way, this is very, very common in the Class 3 or just low-level category. No improvements. So this has resulted in lasers that are not very clinically effective, which is a primary reason for the low sales. Think about it. If this company's been around before a lot of other laser companies, been around a while, if their lasers really worked fantastically, man, they would have a head start. Think about it. They'd be way ahead of the game, right? They'd be selling tons of lasers. Other companies would be scrambling to keep up. But that's not the case at all. In fact, they have extremely low sales. The company did their large stock sale recently, raised $9 million. Was not based on their laser sales, but based on a drug for cancer. Here they are dabbling with other categories. Anyways, versus just being a dedicated laser company, spending over $4 million in annual losses, so on and so forth. So, are they really a laser company? If they weren't involved with this other stuff, then they wouldn't even be in business. So kind of not so much. Okay. So here we are down here now. Consider the context of the laser regulatory environment. What am I talking about here? Okay, so the company, and this goes for a lot of other low-level laser companies, again, not just this one. This is common. They make many claims regarding how unsafe Class 4 lasers are and how much they cause thermal damage, etc. And yet provide no specific claims or FDA notices regarding any of this. You would not believe, this has been going on since the beginning, since the first Class 4 company ever. They've been touting the same scare tactic, fear tactic, okay? You need to see through this. None of these companies ever provided any proof, ever. All right, so all lasers, this is important now, all lasers, both medical and non-medical, are regulated by a division of the FDA, the CDRH, Center for Devices of Radiological Health, with the primary purpose and focus on safety. Okay? If Class 4 lasers, regardless of the type, were as unsafe as they claim, the FDA would have taken action and forced changes regarding the sales and use of these lasers. To date, the FDA has not taken any action against any Class 4 therapy laser company. In other words, so we say therapy laser, lasers that have to do with shining on animals or shining on people's bodies, okay? That was based on the lasers being unsafe or causing thermal damage, which there have been 13 years to prove, since the beginning, this when the first class 4 therapy laser received a 510K FDA clearance, 2003. So if you know anything about the FDA, you know that they love to hassle companies, especially alternative health companies, because I think they're a little corrupt. So the point is, laser therapy could take a lot of money out of the pockets of big pharma and just Western med in general. So if there was some damage or something, they would love to shut somebody's doors or hassle them or send letters, something. Never been the case, okay, regarding thermal damage. Never. It's their job. It's their job to basically, try to create reports and issues and make cases. They haven't done it. All medical devices are at risk for causing harm to a patient if improperly used, including lasers, regardless of classification. You know this. If you're a practitioner, you have different devices. You can hurt anybody with almost anything, if you think about it. Okay, not just lasers. The FDA has a public reporting system. This is crucial right here. This is the nail in the coffin, okay, for, one of the oldest scare tactic BS claims. The FDA has a public reporting system called MAUD, which reports all adverse effects or results from a medical device causing harm or damage. If you're a practitioner, you have a lot of devices, you probably have heard of this organization. There are actually more Class 3 Class 3 therapy lasers and LED pads reported to MAUD than Class 4 therapy lasers for patient reports, due to the unattended use of some of these low power units that have resulted in patients being burned. Wow, check that out. The actual truth is, if anything, we could conclude that low-level lasers are more unsafe, just based off of, let's just say, how many reports, came into this system. Okay? All right, so again, and by the way, you'll see MAUD reports in general on class 1 through 4, okay? You see them all over the place. And if anything, there's a little bit more with the low-level lasers if you actually look statistically. So that's the nail in the coffin. Moving on. What is the difference between class 3 and class 4 lasers? All right, so in paragraph 2, the one down here, they make the claim that there's confusion for the poor results existing in laser therapy based on poorly designed studies. Basically, if you remember, they were making a claim down here about poorly designed studies, as some sort of something that was not good about class 4s. That's totally false, okay? There have been over 3,000 published studies to date, and a lot of those are beautifully designed. They're excellent studies, okay? And those companies have contributed great things, great findings. In fact, some of where we get down, remember the article, to when they get all medical on you and they're talking about tissues and chromophores and all kinds of stuff happening in the cells, some of that information actually came from some of these poorly designed studies. Imagine that. Okay, so there's been fantastic studies if you actually look at the studies. All right, so the reality that these poor results, reported often conclude that there was not, this is fascinating, often conclude that there was not sufficient dosage to elicit a positive or consistent clinical outcome. The majority of these studies are old, used very old technology, and did not consider or test for comparison to other wavelengths or power levels or dosage levels. Okay, so in other words, some of the really, really old studies where they weren't getting enough of a clinical outcome. They were getting an outcome, but not anything significant. That was the actual conclusion. That was their conclusion in many of these studies. They weren't getting a sufficient dosage. What are they talking about? They're talking about power level, power density. In other words, they expect to get a better outcome. They would expect to get a much better outcome with a stronger laser. Okay, so and yes, some of these studies aren't good from the standpoint that they could have been much more helpful if they were comparing like multiple wavelengths and multiple power levels side by side and dosage levels. That would have been helpful. They're still very helpful, a lot of the studies out there, but yeah, for sure it would have been nice if some of those old studies did multiple comparisons of stuff side by side. But that's okay. We still learned quite a lot from them. And again, the most important conclusion that having more power is definitely helpful. Okay, so in paragraph 3, this goes on where they start to talk about their superpulsed lasers and all that kind of stuff. All right. This is another thing that is perpetuated by other superpulsing laser companies out there. Almost verbatim, it's the same sales angle, sales tactic. So this company makes the claim that their superpulse technology penetrates 200 billionths of a second. That is its pulse rate, basically. This is totally false. So you'll actually see other numbers thrown out there that are pretty similar, that sound just as extreme, for some very well-known companies you probably have heard of and that advertise profusely in different magazines and journals. Okay, you can always ask me what that company is over the phone. Anyways, so guess what, folks? There is currently no device that can measure a laser beam penetrating at this speed. Huh. In other words, this is utter BS. So this number, 200 billionth of a second, that was plucked out of the air, probably for marketing purposes, for superpulsing lasers, because it sounds impressive. Wow, 200 billionth of a second. Incredible. Think about that, 200 billionth of a second. My God, that is crazy fast. That would be science would love it if they could measure something that fast. Anyways, but it doesn't exist. So an analogy basically is like putting energy into the body at this speed is like filling a bucket of water one drop at a time. Not very efficient. So, all right. Class, I'm going to continue to go into this third paragraph. So this company makes the claim that their laser has a peak power of 50,000 per diode. This is also very common with superpulsing lasers. They always report peak power. So there's a difference between average output power or constant power and peak power, okay? Just Google the difference, or watch one of my videos where I think I go over the difference, or call me and ask me, or email me. Okay, so peak power is definitely 50,000. You'll see is not impressive whatsoever when you actually calculate the actual average output power. So this is very true, but for some reason class 3 lasers that do superpulsing always talk about power levels in milliwatts, and class 4s talk about it in watts. But with these superpulsing lasers, they always try to sound super impressive. They report 50,000 milliwatts, or 60,000 or 25,000. Really, it's 50 watts. Okay, because remember there's 1,000 milliwatts per watt. Okay, so 50 watts. But there's a difference, folks, between pulsing lasers and continuous wave lasers. Okay, so this 50 watts, and this ties to the actually peak power. What has to do with peak power? Okay. So if you wanted to find the actual output power and compare this laser to a continuous wave laser, class 4 laser, if you wanted to compare it, you would have to get the average output power, okay, calculation of this. And I talk about this in another video, okay? So in other words, it's not really 50 watts of continuous wave. See, so you can see how practitioners get fooled all the time, by the way, with these superpulsing lasers, with this technicality here, because these companies don't really educate the practitioners. Because when you actually do the average output power, a lot of times for something with a peak power like this that superpulses, your continuous wave average output power is usually somewhere between 60 milliwatts and 100 milliwatts. In other words, if you were comparing this to, let's say, a 30-watt continuous wave class 4 laser, that would be like 30 watts compared to 100 milliwatts or 50 milliwatts or whatever, somewhere in that range for a superpulsing laser. Huge difference. And then a practitioner wonders, oh, gee, how come I'm not really getting any significant results with my superpulsing laser? Well, it's power. So anyways, a true 50-watt diode, so we're talking about continuous wave or average output powers, is 50 watts or 50,000 milliwatts, if you want to sound impressive, is large and generates a lot of energy. So this energy must be cooled, which is why these lasers have large cooling systems, or they would overheat. In other words, when you look at a class 4 laser, you can usually tell just by size, honestly, just how big it is, if this thing actually is producing, what it, some real power, because basically it has to handle a whole cooling system in there, okay? And they're also very heavy. So many medical, surgical, aesthetic lasers that are really, really strong, they're large, 50 to 200 pounds, have large cooling systems. Okay? So, you know, if you touch and you pick up some of these super pulse lasers or just low-level lasers, they're super lightweight. You can practically carry them in your pocket, or, I mean, they're just very light. They might be, you know, 5 pounds to, I don't know, like 7 pounds max as the heaviest one. Okay, they don't need a cooling system, and a lot of them are over-the-counter cleared. Over-the-counter means you can leave the laser with your baby or your child and have them play with it. Okay, so here we are. This branch. So this class 4. Okay, so in the next paragraph down here, they make the claim that continuous wave and pulse, super pulse, only penetrate. Continuous wave and pulse. If you don't know, there's a difference between just a regular pulsing laser, okay, and a super pulsing laser. So a lot of continuous wave lasers, by the way, have a function where you can also pulse them, but the pulse speed is way slower, much slower, and can be measured. Okay, might be like 5,000 hertz or something like that. Okay, not 200 billionth of a second. All right. So, anyways, so this company and other class 3 companies make the same claim, especially super pulsing companies in particular, make the claim that continuous wave and pulse only penetrate 1 to 2 centimeters, which their super pulse laser penetrates a deep 10 centimeters as a direct result of their super pulsing technology. Totally false. Common. You'll hear this in the industry. The depth of penetration is a factor of wavelength, power, and treatment beam size, and not super pulsing. Okay, so that's number 1. And there are no studies that indicate any of the superior claims of depth of penetration are valid. And do you know why? Because it's really complicated. Nobody's figured out a really accurate way to basically determine the depth of penetration between like the different lasers, basically. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. If you say why, you know, where's the evidence? You know, with some of these laser companies, super pulsers, you just won't really come up with anything. Okay, they're just empty, unsubstantiated claims. So if you can't reach an injured area of the body with a laser treatment beam, you won't get a clinical response. Okay, and that's based on this company's claim that a class 4 only penetrates 1 to 2 centimeters. Okay, they're saying that you can't reach an injured part. Okay, why are class 4 therapy lasers most successful at treating conditions that require deep penetration? Think about that for a second. You might not know that, but just talk to the type of people you want to talk to, besides honest people, like myself, for example, is you can talk to practitioners that have used both class 4s and and just low-level lasers. Okay, and almost exactly what they will tell you is that they're getting better efficacy, better therapeutic outcomes for the types of conditions that require deeper penetration. You know, deep in the hips, deep in the back, into the discs, just all these deep areas. Okay, deep in the muscles. That's exactly, they'll tell you the complete opposite. Okay, and here is this company saying that, you know, class 4 lasers have shallow penetration. It's the complete opposite. That's why I said basically the depth of penetration is a factor of wavelength, power, treatment beam size. So in this case, okay, we know for sure a class 4 laser usually has tremendously more power density than a low-level laser. Okay? So basically an analogy for their claim is like comparing the depth of penetration of an X-ray. To X-ray the finger bones requires a certain dosage, and to X-ray an area deep in the body requires a much greater dosage, or there would be no X-ray image that would come up. Think about that for a second, because a lot of these rays do have some similar properties. Okay, like infrared going up to X-rays. So you need more power when you're trying to get deeper into the body, basically. Next paragraph. Okay, in this one below, they're making the claim that combined 660 nanometer continuous wave technology. Okay, so they're making the claim, and this is also perpetuated by Actually, a couple class 4 companies too, not to name any names, that talk about adding in their red wavelength. Okay, improves their efficacy. It's actually a couple class 4s, and that I don't really like that much because they have other falsities as well. And class 3s, there's a few companies that also make this bogus claim. So it makes the claim that combining 660 with their treatment beam gets them superior results. Sounds good. It sounds good, especially when you get to all the medical information or all the biology information. The wavelength of 660 nanometers in a therapy laser is always low power. Know that, first off. You can always ask them. It's usually around 3 milliwatts and is used as an aiming beam. Generally, it's usually not for actual therapy. An aiming beam, by the way, because if you're using an infrared laser, you can't see it visibly. So you want to make sure that you are angling on the treatment area. Okay. If you see a little red spot on somebody, that's because that's the aiming beam, and that's also where the infrared laser was probably shooting. Okay, so 3 milliwatts is less power level than a laser pointer. Okay, so it doesn't really do much of anything. So this wavelength of 660 nanometers, you most commonly see used in higher power levels than 3 milliwatts, generally in the field of dermatology, because it's a short wavelength, does not penetrate deep. So it basically makes it really good for superficial conditions. So actually, it's excellent for superficial conditions, skin conditions, but at higher power levels. Just also make that note. And here in this part of the article, we start to get into cytochrome C oxidase, nitric oxide, talking about mitochondria, chromophores, so on and so on and so on. Now, this all starts to sound very convincing, and just know that a lot of this information was pulled from actual class 4 studies and low-level laser studies, okay? And most of this information is true as far as how lasers affect biology, okay? But what confuses people is because they keep sticking, this company name in here amongst all this information. Here's a company name, here's a company name, here's a company name, and they put it next to that. It gives you the impression that all this kind of technical biological information regarding lasers is only achievable with their laser. But really, all this kind of medical sounding information, okay, all this medical information, it's actually just generally true for a variety of lasers, just for laser therapy in general. So if this sounds impressive, it should, because laser therapy is awesome. It works. It's great stuff. Okay? It's true. But do you have to go with, X company or X company to achieve some of these things? Not necessarily, but some lasers will basically be more efficient at stimulating some of these different actions. And generally that happens more so with the amount of power density that you're able to deliver, the amount of joules per centimeter squared into tissue. Okay, so moving on to paragraph 6, which is one of the more last paragraphs. And so they make the claim that there is a class 3 versus class 4 status, with the purpose that class 3 is the laser to buy. Okay. So they repeat again the risk of thermal damage. They just keep on harping on that and harping on that over and over, even at the end of the article, trying to put the fear in you. Okay, so class 4 therapy lasers can treat over a metal implant, if you didn't know. That's another thing that people wonder. Why? Because the mechanism of action is photochemical, not thermal. Wow. So you see a lot of low-level laser companies talking about thermal this, thermal that, with the class 4s. Watch out about metal implants. Okay, there's no issue. There's never been any reported issue with metal implants. But this is case in point right here. Treatment, by the way, has been performed on probably at this point tens of thousands of people with some kind of metal implanted, okay, with class 4 lasers. If there was an issue because it was just putting out a ton of thermal energy, it would definitely warm up that metal implant, and the patient would, there'd be a problem, basically, okay? Never been an issue. It's photochemical, and in this article and on other low-level laser sites, they try to get you to believe it's class 4 is just like some thermal device, like like a heat lamp or something like that. I've seen some companies even compare it to that. Anyways, ultrasound therapy. So here's some examples of thermal devices or that have thermal effects. You may have these in your clinic. Ultrasound therapy devices, diathermy devices. They've been documented. Oh, gee, I wonder. How have they been documented, but class 4s haven't? Okay, because there was nothing to document with class 4s. But these devices have been documented and can cause deep tissue burns. Why? Because the mechanism of action is thermal. Despite these problems, every single physical therapy clinic in the USA have these devices, have used them for 50 years, and the FDA has not removed them from the medical market. So even with adverse reports and thermal energy, they're still on the market and people use them all the time. So anyways, they make a comparison of this company, of this article, to CO2 laser. And as if like that's supposed to be like a legitimate comparison. Okay, a CO2 laser is 100% used for surgical applications. So right now, are you doing surgery? Okay, if you're not, then it doesn't even apply. They don't tell you this in the article, by the way. It's just used for surgery. Okay, so it's not a valid side-by-side comparison. Okay, it's just ridiculous. Okay, this is not a diode-based technology, but uses an entirely different laser technology. Okay, now this is the brand that I'm talking about, and there's 4 other brands on the market that do not use like a gas diode technology like a class 4 would use. They produce an actual laser. Okay, this particular company, and again 4 other companies that try to sound or appear like they're lasers with semiconducting gas diodes are not in fact lasers. They use a different technology. So again, that's another reason why they can't even make a side-by-side comparison. It's ridiculous. To what? They're not even a laser. Okay. All right. So they also repeat the superficial depth of penetration claim just to hammer that home again. Due in part because a class 4 therapy laser treatments is felt by the patient. So obviously all the laser energy is being deposited on the skin and not penetrating deep. So apparently just because you can feel the laser beam means that it's just all being penetrated on skin deep, and it's heat. It's a thermal effect. I mean, okay, you just ask why. It's never been proven. Just because you can feel something, that can be due from a photochemical effect and just by the sheer amount of power that's being delivered. So a class 3 therapy laser treatment is not felt by the patient. Again, a class 3 also has the same photochemical effect, and generally it's not felt just because it's lower power. I mean, that's the main reason. Anyways, the point is they're with unsubstantiated point, and their whole point is complete subjective. That's like saying, hey, our laser works because people can feel it working. I mean, what does that even mean? I want to see some actual objective data. So a laser works because I feel like it does. Okay. And another laser doesn't because, I can't feel something. Anyways, they quote this really confuses people, the Arndt-Schultz law. It sounds very sophisticated, stating their laser is a therapeutic window, has a therapeutic window, and that class 4 therapy lasers exceed this therapeutic window. This is perpetuated, by the way, or something very similar by other low-level laser companies. Okay, not just this brand. Okay, so other class 4s apparently exceed this, which the Arndt-Schultz law. So basically the Arndt-Schultz law, if you look it up, has nothing to do with therapy lasers. This has been used over and over again by class 3 therapy laser companies to try to prove the validity of low power. Look up the law. It has nothing to do with lasers. I mean, what? Now that you know that, and you just see like this ridiculous amount of marketing basically that these companies come up with. I mean and because they know that a lot of people aren't going to Google that and look it up. They'll just believe it. It sounds really technical when you're reading it, and people think like, oh wow, this person knows more than I do. I'm just not even going to look this up. I'm too busy. Meanwhile, if they looked it up, they'd say like, what the heck? This has nothing to do with lasers. Why is this company saying this? What else shouldn't I believe? I mean, it just makes them look ridiculous. All right, the number one problem with not achieving positive clinical outcome is underdosing, okay? Talk to anybody that's been in the field a long time. Talk to practitioners that have used low-level lasers and very high-power lasers. And that's what, and look at the objective data. I mean, this is basically what you will conclude out of all the information out there, okay? Not achieving positive clinical outcome is due to underdosing. So the analogy, and remember, the principle of dosage or dosage time is valid for every healing art, every healing modality, everything. It's all about dosage. So an analogy, for example, is using 100 milligrams of aspirin to treat a migraine headache, okay? You may get some response, but in general, no far-reaching benefit. In other words, it's just not enough of a dosage. If you take a little more, you'll get a better effect. Or it'd be like going to see a doctor, whoever, and them recommending to you to take a certain dosage of something, and then you getting home and saying, you know what, I'm just going to do a quarter of this. Oh, and then we come back to the doctor and say, you know what, I was just getting no results with this medicine. I was taking a quarter of it. I was taking a quarter of the dose. And, the medicine must be to blame. That's basically the line of ridiculous logic, illogical argument that some of these companies are making. But it's all about dosage, all about dosage time. Now, sure, and by the way, there are some very minor sorts of conditions where the dosage time is fine, being very low or being low power. Of course, there's some things out there like that. If you treated the knuckle on your pinky, for example, for a minor injury or whatever with a low-level laser, and you're consistent with it, you probably get great results. Okay, but to have slip disc herniation in the back and be in acute pain, it's a little different. So you're going to need a lot more dosage, a lot more power density for some things. Okay, so that's basically it, and it just goes on and on and on. That's the rest of the article. If you have any questions about what I shared so far, hopefully this was helpful to you. And you can kind of start to see how confusing and misleading some of these companies really are, because it sounds like a very technical article. It's this type of marketing that fools practitioners and home users all the time into basically spending a large amount of money for something that's just outdated technology. And at the end of the day, a lot of these companies just flat out lie. So I'm a dealer for multiple brands. I always try to be honest and transparent. So if you have any questions, visit me at healthhacksreview.com. Call me on my phone anytime. I don't charge anything for my consultation, and I can help you kind of figure out what laser to get. And I can even quote you competitive price points for multiple different companies. So let's figure it out together. And thank you for listening to this very long video. Take care.